And hello everybody, welcome back to another tutorial. I am kinda happy to announce this is our second last tutorial before we finish HTML, which means we're going to be going to HTML5. Now today we'll be doing forms. Now forms is a way of collecting information from the user. Now when we start a form, we usually want people to go somewhere whenever they finish filling in the form, right? Now, to do that, inside the form, you give it an attribute called action equals, in quotation marks, with the link you want it to take them after they have finished, the whole thing, because there's going to be things like buttons with open space, type in your name, press the button. After I press the button, they're going to go to now my channel. Now you get two types of very important attributes. You get method attributes. You get and post. Now when you use get, the data on the information will be visible. Like any information they put into the bars and stuff, it will be visible. Post is when you're trying to hide something like sensitive information, for example, passwords. It offers security because it's not visible to the page address. Next up is input. Now input is basically any information that gets put in, for example, passwords, radio buttons, submit button, and so on and so forth. Anything that has some sort of input value. Okay, now you get different input types. Now input types, you put in something like type and equally to something like text, password, or something like that, and then you give it a name, for example, username. So it's specifically made for a person's username. As you can see here, we have a text box. In there we can put in our username, for example. Okay, now let's say we want to get the user's username and password. So then we're going to give it a type password, which means he's going to put in his password there. We're going to give it a name like password as well. Now this is going to be an input box specifically made for his password. So in the name you can put in anything there, and in the password it won't even show because it's kept private now. Okay, next up is radio buttons. Just so you can know the difference between a radio button and a checkbox is radio buttons allows you to only choose one of the two. A checkbox allows you to choose both of the options you get. You can obviously have more than one option, but let's say you sell tires, but you don't want people to buy multiple tires for different occasions because you want to be a douchebag. Now you give them a radio button, meaning if they want to buy one, they can only choose one of those two. If you give them a checkbox otherwise, then they will be able to choose both of those two types of tires and not just one. You follow me? Okay, now let's do the radio button. Now the type is radio, the name we can make that gender, and the value must always change depending on what it is. So we're going to make the value a male. Now we're going to, outside of the checkbox, we're going to add text male, which will allow the person to see that this radio button, was made for the guy. And then underneath that, we're going to give it another input. Type radio for radio button. The name's going to be gender, since it's in the same category basically. And the value is going to be female. Note the value is different. The value isn't male this time, it's female. The value can also be something like number 1, number 2, or anything as long as it allows you to set them apart. The name only links more than one of the two options. Now the same thing, we're going to put the female text outside of the box. This will allow the text to be next to the radio button. Okay, now as you can see, you can only select one of these two options. Now let's go to the checkbox. It is the same story, but instead of radio, it has checkbox. And we're just going to change the value to 1 and 2. Okay, now as you can see here, I can be male and female. The checkbox allows you to choose more than one. The radio button only allows you to choose one. You catch my drift? Okay, now we're at the submit button. Now, the submit button is actually just mostly known as a button or submit, because you submit the form. You submit the form to someone like your boss, for example. Not really. Now to do the submit, you give an input and then you make a type submit and a value submit. Now the value will be the name displayed on the button. You can make the value whatever you want if you want to change the name. Okay, now just take note. Whenever you create a form, put everything inside of that one form. Don't make multiple forms like I did, because this was only for an example. But you actually put all of these inside of one form, since it's all meant for one specific thing. Okay, now here as you can see, we have a submit button. Also guys, before I go, there's one more thing. If you put inside an input required equals required, then if they don't fill in that field, it's going to give them a pop-up that says this field is required and they have to fill it in. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all learned something new today, and see you all in the next tutorial.